Welcome to the GTA Advisors Podcast. We interview Greater Toronto Area business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. Our goal is to bring Greater Toronto Area residents the best advice from our community's brightest minds. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and real estate innovator, Robert Caruso.
Welcome again, everyone, to another special monthly podcast edition of the GTA Advisors Podcast. I'm Robert Caruso, and I am here with Peter Power from Power Pest Control. Peter, I gotta say, I love your name, man. I love
Thank
it.
Thank you.
And the other thing I gotta say is, if there was a real estate agent with your name, they'd be using it like crazy, abusing it, I should say. Anyway, let's get going. We have a lot to cover today, so. Basically, we're here to talk about ants because ants are a big problem, obviously, this time of year.
Correct.
Spring is practically here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the reasons why ants, some of the problems that ants are causing, how to get rid of them, and even something new. So basically, let's recap, or let's go over what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about Carpenter Ants, Pavement Ants. And CB24 just did a special sort of show on this. Basically, there's an invasion in the city of Toronto, or the GTA, on Boxelder Bugs. So you're going to talk us through about what those are and how to get rid of them, and then we're going to finalize with some spring pest tips. So if you're ready, Peter, we'll get going.
Let's do this.
Yeah, good stuff. So let's start with Carpenter Ants. So what are Carpenter Ants?
Okay, Carpenter ants they're black ants. They're the size for them is anywhere between 0.6 centimeters to 2.5, which is 60 millimeters to 250 millimeters in length. Right now, they are drawn to moist wood. Right, they do not eat wood. They only bore through the wood. Right, termites, they eat wood. Whereas the carpenter ants, they're generally drawn to items of that are moist in nature. Say, for instance, if you had any old wooden windows or wooden doors that have had some issues with water damage, the ants will be drawn to these particular areas, and they will set up a nest. And by that, they will excavate, almost like a subway tunnel. When they excavate, they're going to spit out the actual frass or the actual dust, the sawdust that's there. And they'll leave their telltale signs that they are actually on your property. Okay, and you said that they're normally in moist wood. Moist wood. Dry wood, they cannot. They don't necessarily infest. They can hang out in those areas when they're foraging, but where they like to live is moist, rotting wood.
Okay, so that's basically where they're located, and nowhere really else that you have to worry about, or are there other locations?
Within the home, places. Think of anywhere where water can damage your home. Like, for example, if your home is not graded properly and you got the leak in the basement, a lot of houses have wooden studs. So the wooden studs, if you have one of those post-World War II homes where the bedrooms are on the second floor and then bedroom on the main floor, and then the basement's unfinished or finished, partially finished, you can't see behind the walls until you notice, you say, hey, you know what? That wall looks kind of soggy, right? And then you start seeing the sawdust, and you know what I mean? It's the stud that's rotting away. I've seen situations where the cantina room or the cold room, the ceiling's outside, where the cantina is extended from the front part of the house. And then, when they ripped out the ceiling of the cantina, the carpenter ants were nesting not necessarily in the wood, but they were spray foam, and they will nest inside. They'll nest inside spray foam because it's easy for them to actually excavate and chew through that. So they may mimic what it's like to nest in actual soft wood, damaged wood. But generally speaking, anywhere where water can leak into the house and destroy the wood, such as if you don't clean your eaves trough properly. I've seen a lot of homes where they don't clean their eaves troughs and the eaves troughs are clogged. So what do you think is going to happen with the water? The water is going to overspill, run down the side of the house. It hits a windowsill if it's a wooden windowsill, and if the sill is tilted inward, versus outward, then what happens? The water will run into the windowsill and slowly start rotting it away. Sometimes the front fascia of a house is made of wood, and the front fascia over years, if it's not properly maintained, the ants will when the water damages that front fascia of the wood, the ants will start nesting in there. Other areas, for example, like stucco homes, they're beautiful. I love them. But sometimes, with the contraction and expansion of the stucco, there's hairline fissures in the actual stucco, and the ants will nest behind the styrofoam. So, these things, there's a million and one places. And so, stucco homes are a little harder to kind of figure it out. But once you kind of, track and trace and you follow the ant trail, the pheromone trail, where they're traveling, then, that's how you kind of get an idea of how you're going to attack these guys.
And what about what are the signs of knowing? Like, where do you know where to look for them, or what are the signs that they're there?
Well, okay, good question. So one of the things I asked the homeowner is if you had any leaks in your house. If you had any leaks in the past, like a homeowner would tell me, well, I had a leaky bathroom, or the primer from the toilet, was broken or something, and so water leaked from the stand-up shower into the ceiling, right into the ceiling of the living room, or we replaced some windows, or the windows are damaged from because they're original windows and they're wooden windows. So these are kind of things that I ask the homeowner, and then when I do my inspection, I'll be touching the wood to see if it's soft. If the wood is very soft and mushy, there's a very good chance that the ants are nesting inside there, right? So, and also physical signs such as sawdust, right? And so that's like the remnants of the ants burrowing through the soft wood and leaving it on the ground. So sometimes you'll get up in the morning and you'll say, you know what? I don't know where all this powder is coming from. I don't know where all this rotting wood. You see this, and then the last thing is you start seeing one or two ants here and there, but then the next day you'll see a steady stream of them. Right? You'll see an ant trail going back into a specific spot. So if you see an army of ants going one way, going out one way, and coming back the other, that's a red flag that you got a big problem. You got to address it real quickly.
So you touched on it before about termites and they eat wood, whereas
correct.
Carpenter ants chew through wood. So
correct.
So yes. What's the difference between termites and carpenter ants?
Well, the termites, because I don't specialize in that area, but what I could say to you is that the termites will attack the lower part of the house, where the carpenter ants will attack like anywhere, any of because they could be in the attic, anywhere where there's rotting wood, they will attack. A lot of termite problems are in the beaches. It's been known for years that the termite problem's been there. I was talking to someone, and they explained to me back in the 60s and the 70s, College Street was one of the original areas. Now, I can't back this up for a fact, but this is from talking to someone who lived in the area for a long time, and one of the reasons why is because they left the firewood by the side of the house, right? So, and the termites, they will attack dry wood. They don't care. They don't discriminate, right? Whereas the carpenter ants, they can only attack moist wood, and the termites actually eat wood, and they're extremely destructive. They will destroy a house very, very rapidly. So versus the carpenter ants.
So termites actually eat wood.
Correct, sir.
And so what is a carpenter ant eating? If they're chewing through the wood, what are they eating if they're not eating wood?
They're feeding off pretty much like other insects. They're proteins and sugars. So say for instance inside your house, you will have like jams, sweets. Sometimes you drop some of the some sugar on the floor and so forth. So they're sugar based and protein based feeders. So anything I've seen something really funny where in the summertime I would see ant carry something twice its size and bring it back to the nest. Like I seen them carry like dead wasps back to their nest to feed their brood. So what they do is they will partially engorge an insect or whatever they're feeding on, bring it back to the larvae, regurgitate it to feed the larvae, and they will continue that process. And the queen is the main ant that dictates all what that goes on, right? She is the one that says, you got to do all this stuff while she's doing her thing, and the soldiers go out and do what's necessary to keep the colony going.
That's incredible.
Highly sophisticated.
Absolutely.
Carpenter ants are very organized, very sophisticated. I was reading an article in the Toronto Star, and they said the larger the colony the ants, not just necessarily carpenter ants, but ants in general, the larger the colony, the more efficient and the more organized they are. Humans can't do that. For example, the DVP. You get so many cars on the DVP, and there's a traffic jam. Not with the ants. They're extremely organized, and they send pheromone signals to dictate how things are done, where they're supposed to go. So, say for instance, ants generally get lost within your home because you'll start seeing ants straggling around. But when there's a pheromone scent set up, they're in a specific order, and they have a specific thing that they have to do, such as go out and get food to feed the colony.
Okay. What about nesting? Where are they nesting? Like, obviously it's exterior to the home, right?
Sometimes they can be nesting in a tree. I've seen them, like if a tree is dead, like the leaves have been dying, sorry, and you'll see sawdust around the base of the tree. They'll be nesting inside the tree. Inside the house is a little more trickier because sometimes I have to remove the drywall to find the nest, right? And when you look at, I wish I had a piece of wood to show you, but in the pictures that you have, right, there's one picture you could show the viewers where there's actually how do you say, galleries or rows in which the ants have destroyed, right, where they're laying their eggs and so forth, because they're very protective. If I once I open a nest, whether it's a field nest or ant's nest inside a wall, the first thing they do is grab the eggs and they take off. They're very protective, right? So what happens is that in the actual rotting wood, there's rows or hollowed out rows in which they would nest where they live in. Whereas termites, the structure would look solid from the outside, but it's all sand because they're just literally destroying from the inside.
What kind of treatments can be used to eliminate carpenter ants?
Good question. It all depends on the particular problem. So, say for instance, now some people, they have an aversion to spraying, right? There's some misconceptions, and but people have to realize that Health Canada is extremely stringent on the types of chemicals that we're allowed to use within the home, and the label's extremely clear. The label is the law in Canada. Any misuse of that label, if the Director of Ministry of Environment finds, or Health Canada finds that this is applied inappropriately, where someone got sick or injured, there's a lot of lawsuits can occur. Fines and so forth. You know what I mean? So in Canada, it's very, very strict, right? Of course, all insecticides are poisonous, but when applied correctly, the spray treatment is very effective. But we also do baiting, such as gel treatment. A gel is pretty much like a solid that is laced with some sort of protein or sugar base, where the ants will take it back to the nest to feed the colony. Now, if the situation, it all depends on the situation. If I find that the situation where I need a quick knockdown because the client is seeing 100 ants, a baiting treatment cannot wait. We have to go and spray. The client will have to leave the house for 4 hours. Then when they come back, they have to open the windows for about 20 minutes, and if there's any excess insecticide, they may have to wipe it down before their kids can come in, or their pets. The baiting treatment is best, in my opinion, when there's not a lot of ants. You're seeing it sporadically in a few places, and you're patient enough to wait for the process to occur, because it's not a quick process. It might take a few weeks before you notice results. But when you're spraying, you're actually killing the workers. You're not killing the colony unless you're doing a direct kill shot where, okay, I opened the wall, I found the nest, and now we can spray and we can knock it down right away, right? Because that's the whole idea of spray treatment, where the gelling and baiting and doing some dusting, where you're applying like boric acid or diatomaceous earth to knock the ants out, slowly within the colony.
And so, what do nests look like? How do we know what to look for a nest?
Well, okay, and that's a tricky part, right? So when you look at a solid piece of lumber, it's rectangular, it's solid from end to end. Now, when you see the nest, it's not like it's hard to explain, but when you're looking at a wasp nest, they're social, they're in a nice symmetrical ball. It's not like that for carpenter ants. what it is that they're in the actual wood itself, right? Mm. And the pieces of wood, there's rows on which the wood has been hollowed out, so to speak, right? But they're strips. It's not like termites where, you know, it looks like a solid piece and the inside is all eaten out, right? It's a little different, where the carpenter ants are slowly, you know, boring through the moist wood that's there. So, and then when you start spraying, like you'd use a pyrethrin to flush out the ants in the area, and then all of a sudden, all the ants would come pouring out of that particular area. So that's generally how a nest would look like. Like on my, to kind of get a visual representation, like some of the pictures videos that I showed that I showed you through the Google Drive, you can upload it to as an attachment to this video to show the people what an actual nest would look like, or where how the ants would build a nest within a specific wooden structure that's been damaged.
All right, so let's talk about over-the-counter insecticides. Do they work? Obviously, the best thing to call a professional like yourself, but
sure,
is it worth trying?
Well, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff over the counter, a lot of domestic products that do work. Like, for example, diatomaceous earth is a great product. It's a desiccant. It cuts into the exoskeleton like glass. So what happens? It removes the ability for the insect to retain moisture. However, you have to read and follow the label. A lot of people, they think applying more is better, but there's a saying that I use: less is more. Mm. So, you know, if you don't know what to look for, and if you don't do the research, then you'll not be able to eradicate the pest problem. You'll control it, but you will not be able to eliminate. So a lot of my clients will tell me, you know, I went to Home Depot, I went to some of these other stores that sell these products, great products. I was able to get rid of the problem for the season. However, they were not able to eradicate the problem. And this is where an exterminator comes in, because we have the experience and so forth. So some of these products will work, but you have to read and follow the label. You have to have the experience of doing it time and time again in order for you to eliminate the problem. So it's a yes or no sort of thing. It's all depending if you read and follow the label.
Yeah. So when you're going into like a home, what would be some of the questions that you ask a homeowner to better understand the pest problem that they're having with ants, or these ants anyway, the carpenter ants?
Sure. So some of the things that I would ask Robert is, like, you know, how long have you had the pest problem? Where are you seeing the ants? Okay. You know, have you had this problem in the past before? What's your windows like? If it's wooden windows versus wooden doors, and then I would explain to the client what process, how I'd go about doing the inspection, where I'd be looking for like grading issues, checking to see if the eaves troughs are clean on a regular basis, and I'd ask the homeowner, do you regularly clean your eaves troughs? It's amazing how many homeowners don't clean their eaves troughs on a regular basis. That's probably one of the most important things on the home, is having clean and eaves troughs that are pointed properly so they drain. Because if the water is not pointing away from the house, then it's pointing towards the house, and the water will come into the house. So those are kind of some of the things that I'll ask a customer, and I'll do an exterior inspection to see these kind of things, like if there's settlement cracks where insects can hide on the outside, going into the structure of the home and so forth. So these are kind of the things that I would talk to the client about and get an idea before I come on site, because then at least I have a game plan strategy on how I'm going to be able to attack the problem.
Now, I got to be honest, you gave me this question because you're the expert, because you need people to know, but you have to think like the pest in order to figure out where they're coming from and where they're going, correct?
Absolutely. So in order, like, I know this is going to sound really cheesy, but you have to be one with what you're going with, right? Like, when I'm going after vermin, like rats and mice, I got to think like, I'm this small, and the predators are going to come and attack me. So where am I going to hide? What am I going to eat? What am I going to do? So when we're dealing with ants, like carpenter ants, like I have to think. Okay, fine. So there's a crack. I'm foraging, looking for food. To feed my colony. There's a crack. I'm going to go into this crack, and surprise, I found rotting wood. So then I'm going to release a pheromone signal to the other insects to let them know that I found some place of interest. Let's go and nest in this area, and let's see what we can do with this. And that's pretty much the process that I would go through. It's almost like being a detective, right? You kind of have to be a detective, and you kind of have to break things down into pieces. You just can't go into a home, spray and pray, and thank you for the money and see you later. No, there's a lot more involved. There's inspections. There's asking questions, and then there's doing, follow-ups, of course, to make sure that the problem is gone for good.
Absolutely. So let's move over to pavement ants. So
okay.
What are pavement ants?
Pavement ants, I tend to think of when people, to give the person the best idea of what a pavement ant is, it's like when you're on your driveway, you see those that sand castles that are being built?
Yep.
Now, those are the pavement ants. They're reddish brown in color. They're really small. They're about 20 millimeters to about 20 to 40 millimeters in length, right? They're brown in color. They tend to nest around interlock. Like if you have the pattern concrete, or if you have interlocking in your backyard, or like on the sidewalk, if your backyard sidewalk, wherever those cracks are, they'll nest in those areas. Where I find pavement ants nesting is around the sliding door. You know that metal lip that is used for the sliding door? When the client wants that lip removed, we tend to find a lot of that in the actual stone, the actual concrete lip. So if we were to remove that, you'd find them nesting in that particular area. Or where the concrete base for the basement meets the first row of bricks. So the first row of bricks that they apply to the base of the concrete, they usually find a way to get into the weep holes and nest in those areas. That's where I usually find the pavement ants. So they nest in the concrete structures of a home.
Are those okay? So obviously, all ants are looking for kind of like food, right? Sugar. Whatever,
correct. Right? Yes, that's right.
These are doing the same thing. I know we've all seen those ant hills.
Correct, sir. Yes. Yes.
So are these as dangerous as the carpenter ants?
No, they're not. They're not dangerous. They're not dangerous. They're more of a nuisance than anything else. I would say, because if I look at carpenter ants, it's a big threat, because the carpenter ants is going to lead you to a problem that you didn't even realize you had. Like for example, because the carpenter ants will only bite you if you provoke them. But generally speaking, they're quite docile. But the carpenter ants is a symptom of something else that's going on in your home. So if you didn't know that you had leaky windows, you got these old windows, I'm going to replace it because for something aesthetic, and then you open that window, or you open that wall, and you say, oh my gosh, I got this big problem. So now my role would come in, get rid of the carpenter ants, and explain to you why this occurred. And we explained that earlier in the podcast, what some of these things could be.
Okay, so just to recap a little bit. So
Sure.
Obviously termites are area specific, and they're more in certain areas like the beaches, or like we talked about before.
Correct. Yes.
Is that the same thing with the carpenter ants or pavement ants? I know pavement ants probably pretty much anywhere, right?
Yeah, correct. That's right, Robert. They're anywhere. They could be anywhere, but generally speaking, they will target homes that have your asphalt driving, your interlock, your pattern concrete. They could be they can attack almost any home, but homes that are more susceptible with that kind of with those kinds of setups are most likely to have those ants in their home, from my experience. Now,
we've all probably walked down a sidewalk or two in our life, see a little bit of Coke spilt, and you see all these ants around it.
That's right.
Is that the food they're looking like? Anything sweet or any food?
Sugar and protein based, correct. Yeah, so, like for example, perfect example, you have peanut butter. Peanut butter is protein. They'll go after that. You have jam, it's sugar. They'll go after that. So sometimes, depending on the season, the ants sometimes they're finicky eaters, right? So that's another thing with baiting. You have to kind of understand the season on when you're baiting versus when because sometimes the ants are more likely to go for a sugar bait versus a protein bait, right? So that's kind of the thing you have to kind of figure out and understand. And sometimes you might have to use more than one type of bait, because sometimes the ants, I've seen when I put the bait down, the ants have actually gone around the bait. They completely ignore it because they don't like it. It's like fine dining. They're very picky on what they want. Like if we were talking about pharaoh ants. Now pharaoh ants, you find them a lot in apartment buildings and so forth. Now when you can only bait pharaoh ants, right? They're little tiny red ants, much smaller than the carpenter ants. And when you apply the gel, sometimes I have to use two different types of gel baits, right? And I may have to use a sugar bait and a protein bait, because the ant will technically walk over one bait and go towards another, right? And you have to do multiple baiting, because sometimes the bait might get hard and they may not want to touch it. So it's, you have to kind of cater to the ant when you're doing the baiting. You have to kind of study where they're going, follow the ant trail, place it along their ant trail. You got to make it easy for them, right? You can't just put it anywhere. You have to kind of figure out where they're going and bring the food to them so that it's easier for them to take it back to the nest and kill the colony.
And how do you get rid of the pavement ants?
Generally speaking, an exterior and interior spray is the best way for me, I find, 90% of the time. But sometimes you can't just necessarily do that. You have to do a little more inspections. Take a look at, like I said, where they're going to be nesting around the base of where the concrete foundation meets the first row of bricks. If there's spaces between there, sometimes on the inner part of the house there's a ledger board where in the cold room where they tend to nest and so forth. So you may have to flush them out. Sometimes when you have two pieces of concrete being fused together. So what I mean by that, you have your house, which is one piece, and then you have your front step that's used like the cantina. Now sometimes if they're two separate pieces, you'll see a little fissure from the top step and the base of the house, and the ants will go into that space and they'll nest inside there. So you kind of have to look for those particular things when you're hunting for the ants.
And obviously the best thing is to call the expert. But
call an expert, yes.
Is it possible, like what can somebody do on their own, or at least start the process? Should they be doing anything?
Yeah, they can buy the do-it-yourself products, but here's some of the challenges with do-it-yourself products. First of all, they're domestic. So the percentage, the guarantee that they call it with the active ingredient is a lot less. Whereas the active ingredient for someone like myself, because I'm a licensed exterminator, licensed structural exterminator, we have commercial products that the percentages are a little higher, and some of the ingredients that are in there that has a little bit more of a kick, where they'll be more attracted to the bait versus some of the stuff that you get off the shelf, right? So, like I said, some people just think that I just set up the ant traps, put it on the trail, and that works. It doesn't always work that way, because sometimes they may not take the bait right away, and in order to eliminate that problem a lot quickly, you might want someone like an exterminator like myself to come in there and knock that problem as quickly as possible. Because in the end, you pay $15 for some bait stations, but then you have to pay an exterminator a couple $100 to eliminate. So you're actually spending more money by doing it that way than just doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to those to the CP24 special that they were they were talking about these Boxelder Bugs. I personally haven't heard of them, but they're invading Toronto, or the GTA.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit more about it while we're in this market where they're invading everything?
Yeah, generally speaking, the Boxelder Bugs tend to come out in like late August, early September. They are attracted to the Manitoba maple tree. That if you have the Manitoba maple tree, they will attack that tree. And what they're doing is they're trying to set up they're trying to overwinter in your home. What I mean by overwinter is hibernate, right, within your home. So here we go back to cracks and crevices. So if you have those windows that are not caulked properly, you got weep holes where they can go in underneath the soffit, where the metal soffit meets the brick roof line. They'll nest in the attics. They'll nest around the windows, in the weep holes. And what happens is that in the spring, like right now, or early spring, you'll start seeing these Boxelder bugs start coming out in large numbers. And the reason why they come out in large numbers is because of the fact that the homeowner wasn't aware that they had a problem, or they didn't do anything. They set up shop within their home, and then now they come out of hibernation, and now they're swarming in large numbers within their home.
And what kind of what are they looking for? What do they eat? And I mean, inside your home.
Well, they don't really eat anything inside the home. They're really a plant feeder. They're just They're generally a plant feeder and so forth. So they're more of a nuisance than anything else. And that's why people are saying, well, how come the city won't do anything? Well, it's not like an invasive species like the assassin beetle. It's not the assassin beetle. Sorry, the
longhorn.
The longhorn Asian beetle. That's correct. Yes, like in Vaughan, they have the longhorn Asian beetle. It's an invasive species, and they destroy areas of trees and so forth. And they're not indigenous to our country. So the city and the province will has an active strategy to eliminate those beetles. But for this, it's more of a nuisance, and so that's why the city won't do anything in regards to that. So once it's on your property, it's your responsibility. But in August and September is the best time to attack that.
So, but we're in March, April tomorrow.
that's right. Yeah, we're right in the middle of spring. We're just right in the beginning of spring, and the weather is getting warm. So what had happened is that the homeowners previously didn't actually recognize that they had a problem, and so these Boxelder bugs, they swarm in the thousands on your house. Sometimes the funny thing with the Boxelder bugs is that, okay, you live at number 2 on this X street, and the person lives at number 4. Now, number 2 has thousands of Boxelder bugs, but number 4 has nothing.
Wow.
Right? And if you don't spray those Boxelder bugs on the exterior of your home, then what happens is that they will nest. And when the weather gets warmer, they're going to come out. The stronger bugs will reactivate, and they'll start showing up in large numbers within your home.
So it's definitely something to watch out for, and obviously call you for help.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you.
Good stuff. So why don't we move along and go into these spring pest tips? Maybe
Absolutely.
You can list what we should be doing in the springtime, or what you could be helping us with the spring time.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a few things. First thing is roof line. The roof line is my favorite, because the first thing I look at is to see if you've cleaned your gutters. If leaves are in your gutters, you must clean it regularly. Twice, especially if you live in an area like some parts of Sophotobacco or even Forest Hill where they love their trees, the leaves are always falling down. So you should get in the habit of cleaning it at least 3 or 4 times. Not twice, not just the fall and the fall and the spring, but twice in the fall, twice in the spring, right? Now I wanted to touch upon something else as well. Gutter guards. Now, I love when people talk about gutter guards, but this is just my personal opinion. I'm not trying to attack anybody who installs them, but gutter guards give a false sense of security, because what the people say is that the gutter guards, when you install them, the leaves will just blow right off the guards. But here's the problem. If it rains heavily and the leaves get stuck, it mulches on the gutter guard. So you still have to physically remove it. Yes, the cleaning is not as abrasive and as invasive, but you still have to clean the gutter guards on a regular by just going up on the ladder, getting a brush and sweeping them off, right? Also grading. So one of the things that I always take a look for is the grading. Just making sure, generally, I'm not a specialist in grading, but generally you want to make sure that the water, if it rains, that the water is running away from the house. And that goes right back from your yeast trough, that's your grass, that's your your planters, everything. Because if water can get into the house, and if there's wood behind the cinder blocks where they'll rot the wood out, and the insects will find a way to get in. Now, going to garden beds. Mulch is beautiful. I love mulch. I love black mulch. I'm planning on setting it up. I want to set up a garden on my property. But one of the things you got to remember, water is essential for all life. Now, if you over mulch your garden, right, by overwatering, what do you think is going to happen? The insects are going to be drawn to the mulch, and then they're going to come closer to the house. So sometimes people complain about centipedes and sow bugs coming into their home. Now, centipedes and sow bugs are plant feeders. Sow bugs, when they come into your house, they end up dying. The reason why is because they're in search of plants, and they got lost, and they end up in your basement, and they end up dying. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can put a dehumidifier inside the basement to suck up the moisture to kind of dry it out. But depending on how high you put it, it might not be as comfortable, right, in the basement area. Also, you want to take. Now we're going to go to the garage. Now, in the garage, there is, some people they use their garage as a storage facility, just like a got junk storage facility where you store everything. Now, what you should do is get in the habit of, putting shelves in the garage and keeping things off the ground. The reason for that, because, you open your garage, you put your car in, you forget to close the garage. Now, guess what happens? If you live nearby a ravine, mice and rats will end up in your garage. And if you got all these boxes and stuff on the floor, it's a great place for them to hide. You got to remember, think like a mouse, think like a rat. If you're that small and you're trying to evade your enemy, where are you going to hide? You know what I mean? You're going to hide in places where they can't see you. So if you have shelves that are about, I think, roughly 18 inches off the ground, it's perfect. And nothing underneath the bottom shelf, it's beautiful, because the rodent's going to run in. They're gonna see that they're not comfortable, because rodents have poor vision. They run against the structure of the wall, right? So when they run against the structure of the wall and they see that they can't find any place to hide, they're going to do their best to get out of there, right? So that's one of the ways of deterring rodents, by keeping your garage as organized and as neat as possible. All right, and making sure that your windows are caulked thoroughly. You know what I mean? Because sometimes over time, the windows, with expansion contraction, the caulking starts to erode. So you want to make sure that those areas are caulked up around the windows and doors, and any kind of expansion joints that you have that need to be sealed from the exterior, right? So one more thing I want to point out as well, I know I'm just jumping back and forth right here, but with the soffit, mice tend to run up into the attic, right? And how they do that is by climbing up the brick wall and squeezing up between the soffit and the brick line. So one of the things you might want to do is get a specialist that's a professional caulker and caulking where the soffit meets the brick wall to prevent the mice from coming in to your home. So these are some of the things that I will look for. And one more thing I want to point out, this is actually very important to the carpenter ants. Now, if you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of trees, sometimes you're the one that likes to have the very beautiful lush tree branches surrounding your home, but you should actually cut back your tree branches about, I would say, 18 inches from the house, because you do not want, because if I come to spray your home, I'm only spraying the base of your house about a foot up and the windows and doors, but I am not going to be able to spray the roof line and all those areas. So the ants will bypass my spray. They'll climb up the tree, walk across the tree branch, and hit the roof line. And they can possibly set up a nest if you have damaged plywood from a leaky roof. So that's one of the most important things for carpenter ants, that you must cut back any tree branches that are touching the house.
That's good advice. I appreciate all that great advice, and hopefully our listeners get a lot of value from this. That was amazing, Peter. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, so I really want to thank you for coming on the monthly tips and tricks podcast.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's going to be the new name, but definitely what we're going to do is we're going to have you again, and we'll go through some more tips that you can give us and some more information. Is there anything else you want to say or leave us with?
Well, absolutely. If any of your viewers have any questions whatsoever, feel free to send me an email, info@powerpestcontrol.ca. Always remember, don't be afraid. I am not going to try and charge you money. I just want to help you. Also, on my website, powerpestcontrol.ca, there's a search function, right? And the cool thing about that, if you have a problem, carpenter ants, bed bugs, centipede, silverfish, I have multiple blogs written on various articles that can help you. So it's a quick way to search, okay, I got a problem with bed bugs. Type in bed bugs on the search function, and there's multiple blog articles, and also inner pages that will talk about bed bugs that will help you in your journey, and so that in solving your pest problems. So use my website as a reference to help you solve your pest problems. Even if you don't hire me, I still would like you to use my website and use me as a point of reference if you need me for anything.
Oh, that's very nice of you, and I have been through your blog, and you're an amazing writer, and I enjoy the information that you provide, absolutely, and I think people will get some good value there.
Thank you so much, Robert.
All right, we will see you again next month.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.